Thank you so much, Zoe. And it's our pleasure to be here. I'm Bianca, it's Loretta, and as Zoe said, we are from I Am Independent. Um, I'm independent. I'm going to do a like a brief introduction, and we're going to dive right in because we don't have a lot of time. And this session, we do kind of share this session as a boot camp, but we usually like take 2.5 hours or something. So we've condensed it, so we're not going to do much waffling. But I just wanted to say that I'm Independent is our platform where we just want to help independent artists to grow and have thriving careers. I'm an independent artist myself. Loretta has been an independent artist. She's a manager. She's my manager. She's an artist consultant. She's been a radio host. She's done so many things, and we joined forces because we both have this common interest to help independent artists because we know it is tricky to do what we do. If you're signed, you get a lot more help and you have infrastructure around you. But if you're independent, you're trying to grow yourself, you're trying to learn, you're trying to manage yourself, you're trying to do all the things yourself. And so we wanted to create something where if you had any questions about doing anything to do with your career, that you could hit us up. You could go on our podcast or on our website or on our Instagram, or attend one of our boot camps, and your question would be answered. So we get other artists to share their stories and their journeys, and we have loads of industry members come in and we interview them, ask them questions, and we share all that information with independent artists like you. So this session is going to be all about music admin. And when you think about getting paid as an artist, it's quite a tricky thing, because streams are, you don't get much from streams, and it's hard to earn. But actually, a lot of it is about setting yourself up to be able to earn from you doing your creative work. So this session is about how you set yourself up with royalties companies and in all various different ways, so that when you do go and do a gig, when you are releasing music, when you're doing all the things that you love, you've set yourself up in a way where the machinery will hopefully be able to draw from those activities, and you will be able to get paid from all those different places. So we don't know anything about you guys' journeys, so we may be, teaching you to suck eggs and you know everything already, or this might be all new to you. But we want this to be something that is helpful to you individually. So if you have a question about any of these areas throughout the session, please just do put them in the chat. And I think about 3/4 of the way through, we will have a quick check at the questions, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end to check through questions. Even if your question is not entirely in line with what we've spoken about, just drop it in, and if we have time at the end, we will answer that too. And don't feel that you have to take major notes, because we have a handout with basically all of what we're going to speak about, and we will give that to Zoe for you guys to have after the session. So I'm going to hand over to Loretta, who's going to start us off talking about royalties.
Thanks, B. It's lovely to meet you guys. Normally, like B said, if we had a bit longer, we would hear a bit about each of you and your music, because we love to hear about emerging artists and their journeys and their backgrounds. But feel free to connect with us after this. So, I mean, the topic that we're focusing on today, like we say, our boot camp's normally a 4-week course where each week is 2.5 hours, but we're focusing on music admin because it's probably the most boring and most unsexy part of being an independent artist, but it's actually the most important. And you'd be surprised at how many independent artists either haven't heard about it or know about it, but like, oh, I must get around to doing that. And just there's a few basic things that if you just get it done while you've got a bit more time, it can set you up. Who here already has heard of PRS or PPL, both or either? Do a little raise of hands. Cool. Okay. And put your hand up if you're a member of both of them. Okay. Of both? Of one? Is that what the... Okay. Put your hand up if you're a member of PRS. And put your hand up if you're a member of PPL. Cool. Okay. top marks to Ellen and Katie there. But it is one of those things that you've probably heard of, even if you're not registered with it. And tonight we're going to tell you why it's so important. If there's one thing that you should do, it's pretty much to register with PRS and PPL. So sorry for those of you who already know what they are and what they do. I'm a manager. I've been an artist before that, as Bianca said, and I still sometimes go on a refresher seminar or workshop on PRS and PPL. Go, have I understood that correctly? And also because their websites aren't very helpful. Fortunately, PRS have recently updated theirs, so theirs is a lot better. PPL still has a lot to be desired, but we're going to just try and really break it down for you, because you can't understand this too much. So PPL and PRS for Music are both music licensing companies, because both of them act on behalf of the members to manage their rights. So your rights with regards to your music. Sometimes they're called a pro, other people call them a collective management organization. So they issue licenses, but they also collect the royalties that are due to you on your songs. Any music that's copyright protected, they will basically allocate it to the members, to the people who it rightfully belongs to. So PRS represents songwriters, composers and performers for the use of their musical compositions and lyrics. And that's the key there with PRS, is musical composition and lyrics. And they provide licenses for live music broadcast on radio, TV and online. Now, PPL represents recording rights holders and performers for the use of their recordings and performances. So whereas PRS is the musical compositions themselves and the lyrics, PPL is for the recordings and the performances. So of course, if you make music, if you write a song, then PRS is relevant to you. Whether you performed that nowhere, even if you've only performed it in your bedroom and it only exists on a piece of paper in your bedroom, PRS is still relevant to you because you're a songwriter. Once you've recorded a song, again, even if it's in a home studio, but you've put it out there on SoundCloud or Spotify or anywhere, or it just exists as a recording, then PPL becomes relevant to you. So I'm going to go through each one, and I've got a short video that I hope will be helpful as well. PRS are the Performers' Rights Society, as I mentioned. So they collect and distribute money on behalf of songwriters. So if you've ever written a song, or you need to be a member of PRS, they pay royalties to your the members if the work's performed, broadcast, streamed, downloaded, reproduced, played in public, or used in film and TV. Any of those contexts, then you are due some money if you've written a song. So joining PRS for Music as a songwriter or composer means that you can earn money when your music's used. This even means if it's played on local radio, or if you just do a gig at your local pub, if it's registered with PRS, you can still earn a bit of money for that even. So that it can't really be too soon to join. It is a one-off membership fee. It's £100, but that's it for life for writers and composers. And it's really worth doing. But if you really wanted to make sure you were going to earn that £100 back, a few examples for you. One play on a BBC primetime show. Okay, it might be unlikely for a very new artist, but that will cover your membership. 6 plays on Sky One would cover it. 2 plays on ITV, 5 plays on BBC Radio 1. So if you got selected for BBC Introducing, 5 plays and that's it's paid your membership, or 150 plays on independent local radio. So if you're a DJ and you're creating your own music, you can join. It also includes remixers, people who are sampling other people's music as well. You might be a producer who's included in the copyright share of a work as well. All of those things mean that you are due some money. Also, if you perform live, if your music is performed in even a small pub or a very small venue, there's actually a gigs and clubs scheme with PRS. So each venue has to register with PRS, and there's a really simple form that you can fill in. Even if you performed at, say, an open mic night, you put your set list in, and then you'll be due some money for performing your own songs in that venue. If it's a really big venue, say you won a competition or something to perform with a really well-known band, and you just did 2 of your own songs, it can actually be quite a substantial amount of money. So it's really worth doing. But even if you got 25 quid from performing at your local pub, it's really worth doing this registering. But of course, if you're not a member, they can't collect for you. So hopefully I've stressed enough to join. The next thing to do is to make sure you register your work. So it's not enough just to be a member. You need to make sure they know that your songs exist so that they can collect the royalties on your behalf. So as a writer or a composer, you can register your own works. You can amend details at any time. So if there's changes or different versions, you can go into your account and do that. If you've got a publisher, which again is probably unlikely if you're an independent artist, then they will usually do that on your behalf. But if you're independent, this is something that you need to take care of. Now, nobody becomes an artist. Oh, I'd really love to do some admin. I'd love to do that and spend hours and hours. But of course, the independent artist is a team of one to a certain extent. So it is your responsibility to make sure you do this, and it really does pay off. There's a few things you need when you register your works. You need your membership number, which you'll be given when you join. You'll need the title of the song. And if it is a bit ambiguous about, like you could write, say it's got the number 2 in the title, you want to register it with the number 2, but also with the word 2 as well. You need the name and the writer of any existing work that's been sampled or remixed, which might be in that song. And you also need the duration of the song, because if it's longer than, I think it's 3.5 minutes, then you actually due a bit more money. So it's worth putting in how long the song is. So I've got a really simple video. If I can share my screen, I'm going to try and do it. Let me just bring it up first. That will just show you how to register an unpublished work. This is assuming some of you may have very lucrative publishing deals with Sony ATV, for all I know, but in case you haven't, this will just show you that. So I'm just going to share my screen now. I've got so many tabs open that I can barely find it. Here we go. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Great.
Work is published, and it is your publisher's responsibility to register the work on our database. Please note, it is important to register your own claim on a work, even if it has already been registered by a co-writer, otherwise you may not be paid. To start the works registration process, log into the YouthMusic website, and on the home screen, click on the Register or Amend Works button. On the following screen, click on Register a New Work. You'll now see the Works Details screen. In the work title box, enter the name of your work. If the work has any variations of the title by which it may be known or identified, enter these into the alternative title box and click on the Add button. If you know the duration of the work, enter it into the duration fields. You can skip the categorization of work fields unless your work has been written specifically for the purposes listed or includes a sample of another writer's work. Now, click on the Next button. You will now see the Interested Parties screen. An interested party is anyone that wishes to claim a share on the work, for example, co-writers, publishers, and arrangers. In the Performance Percentage field, enter the applicable percentage share relevant to your entitlement of performing royalties. If you are the only writer, then this will be 100%. Whether you are a member of MCPS or not, enter the mechanical share of the royalties in the mechanical field to ensure that all the shares on the work are fully claimed. If your work is co-written, enter your co-writer's details and their shares by clicking Add Writer in the Other Writers section. Once you're finished, click on the Next button. You will now see the Users Information screen. If you have performer, product information, or an ISRC to add to the work, select Yes. Then enter the artist name, product title, and any ISRCs you have for the work. Click the Add button to save the artist name and ISRC. Should your work become active in the USA, one of the American Performing Rights Societies will represent your work. If you have a preference between ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, select the relevant society. Otherwise, leave the option as unknown. Now, click on the Next button. You'll now see the Multiple Submission Information screen. Should you wish to register multiple works with exactly the same interested parties and shares as on this work, select yes, and you can register up to 99 works at the same time. If works have different co-writers or songwriting shares, these need to be registered individually. Click on the next button. You'll now see the summary details screen. This shows all of the information included in this new work registration. By default, you will receive emailed acknowledgements relating to this new work registration. If you do not want to receive these emails, untick the relevant boxes. Once you have reviewed the summary screen, click Send to submit the registration. It takes up to 48 hours for the new work registration to appear online. Unless you have indicated otherwise, you'll receive an automated confirmation email when the work is registered on our system. This email will contain a tune code, which is a unique reference number for every work. Thank you for watching our tutorial video on works registration.
Well, he made it sound about as exciting as it really is. I'm not going to show you the PPL one because that's even more send you to sleep and it is much more complicated, but I will just go through a few bits on that before we move on to something, well, only slightly more interesting. So PPL is the UK's music licensing company for over 110,000 performers and they're recording rights holders. So they license recorded music when it's broadcast on radio, TV and online. So that's for radio stations, TV stations, but also music suppliers to copy recorded music for services like in-store music systems, jukeboxes, compilations, exercise classes, all of those things where music's been musical recording is used. So they basically ensure, like PRS, that their revenue flows back to their members after deducting their operation costs. And it basically means that as well as being the person who's written the song, if you're the artist, if you've also recorded this music, then you own the rights to that music as well. So that means you are owed a royalty for owning that music and for performing on that music, as well as the other people who've performed on the music as well. As I said, it's a lot more complicated to register. There is a tutorial video, which I'm not going to make you watch now, but we will put a link to it in the handout because it is really important to do it. If you haven't, I know a few of you aren't members, if you've released music, I think up to the last year, it might even be longer than that, you can kind of back claim. So it's still worth joining and registering your music for that. So
just a little thing, sorry to interrupt. I think you need to register your music within 6 months of having released it. So you don't have to register.
12 months of having released it, isn't it? But
12 months of having released it. You don't have to do it straight away once you've released it, but you need to have it in the back of your mind that you need to. It's probably better to do it straight away. And I just want to say, well, just a quick thing, because sometimes it can be hard to understand the difference between PPL and PRS. But if you've written on the song, like you've literally written the song or the music or the lyrics and the melody or the chords, then that's for PRS that you would get paid from. But everyone that's like sung on it or played on the guitar on it or the triangle or backing vocals, those people get paid from PPL. So it's like whatever you performed on that recording. So that's the difference between the things that you'll get paid from the different places. Sometimes it's hard to know what's the point, but yeah, that's the literal difference of those are different royalties.
And of course, if you're an independent artist, your own music that you've written, but you've also performed on it, then you're due money from both. So you don't want to be selling yourself short by only being registered with one. We're going to move on to song splits now, which I don't know how many of you collaborate with other people or enjoy that, but it's something that's really worth understanding to sort out before you start doing it.
Yes, so I'm gonna quickly go into song splits and what we mean by song splits. It's probably obvious, but if you think of a song as a pie, anyone who's contributed to creating that pie is potentially entitled to a portion of it, and that's what we call songwriting splits. And it can be quite a contentious thing. It can be a thing that we avoid talking about or we leave it too late. to talk about it. But we're just going to just give a brief rundown of that and some best practices around that. I'm going to start off with a video that we recorded with a producer called Fermi, because he does give a great sort of overview of songwriting splits and fees, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail on it. So I will try and share my screen. There we go. There we go.
Hi, my name is Fermi. Most people call me Fez, but my mum calls me Olua Fermi Ogunchende, YouTube's. And I am a producer, songwriter, and a musician. In relation to fees, splits, contracts with producers, that should be in the first conversation you have with the producer. So it's very clear what you expect from them, what they expect from you. And I would always say that from fees perspective, I always ask what your budget is. And sometimes that's substantial for what you're looking for, sometimes it isn't. And my job is to make it clear that if you wanted to do an EP for a certain amount of money, I can make it clear to you that that certain amount of money can only cater to a single. And then it throws the ball back in your court to figure out what you want to do with your music. At the end of the day, it's your career, it's your journey, and you have to figure out and make decisions based on facts. When it comes to splits, I have a chart that I use all the time that basically just, we both have access to this chart that just makes it very clear when we write a song together, who wrote the melody, who came up with the chords, who produced it. Those things keep things so clean, because some people just don't say anything till the end of the process, and then when the song gets loads of hits, they're like, oh, you know, that's like 25%. I think that's an amateur way of dealing with things. Is first of all, lyrics. Secondly is melody, chord sequence, and production. The reason I say production and what falls under production is structure. And there's so much creative content now in production, probably more than before. I may be wrong, don't quote me. But those are the four things that I tend to split, that splits constitute of. And I would definitely say that some people aren't sure if it's everybody in the room while the music is being made that is entitled to a split. I personally disagree. I think it's everybody that has a creative input to a song. Just giving an opinion about a verse isn't writing a verse. It's just giving an opinion. You could put out what you're writing to anyone in the world and they'll give you an opinion about it. That doesn't necessarily mean they have a cut on your record. And I think you have to be quite strict with that conversation. And also just, I guess, just to help you, be careful who you allow in the room when you're actually making your music, is what I'd say. When an artist comes in with written songs, it's important to be clear at that point as well that if the producer does change the structure or alters a melody, that the conversation about splits is had then as well. I understand that you want to be protective of the song that you've written, but it takes one person to have a great idea and it takes a community to make a great record. So you have to understand that from the jump. And it's always important to have that conversation as close to the moment it happened than not, or else it becomes blurred and you're not sure who said what did what, and that could sometimes cause an altercation between you and your producer.
Oh, 1 second, because there we go. So that was Fermi just giving a quick overview on song splits, and I always love to start with that because he really kind of tells it to us quite succinctly. But a few points around song splits. As he said, and it's practice for me as well, I always try to agree splits in advance. If there's anything that is the most important thing, it's to have that conversation, even if you're working with friends. So if you are creating music with friends, you're creating music with anybody, having a conversation about this as early as possible is important. And it can seem a bit daunting. I know it's a bit like orcs, but it doesn't have to be an intense conversation. For me, I'm going to give some examples of sort of different scenarios, because as Fermi said, there are different parts to the writing of a song. It's the lyrics, the chords, the song structure, the top line, which is the vocal melody. All these parts of a song are called songwriting, and it's all a part of things that people can be paid for. And there's different scenarios. I have a song that I put out, I think it was last year or the year before, called Blood in the Water, and I'm showing it because it was quite a unique situation. Generally, I write my own songs. I'm at home, write my own songs. I write them on guitar. I've written the vocal melody, the top line. I've written all the lyrics. I know how I want it set out, verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. I've written the chords. So I go to the studio and to a producer, and I have written the song. So they are just producing the song. So in that scenario, I'm getting 100% of my PRS royalty, my songwriting royalty, because I wrote everything. And that's usually pretty clear. That's something I would probably confirm with somebody that I haven't worked with before, in case they come up with some mythical other way of doing it. But generally, it's known that in that scenario, I'm getting all my PRS, and they will be getting some royalty from the PPL as a producer. And if they play other instruments on it, they will get some royalty off the PPL recorded side of things. This song, Blood in the Water, the producer had approached me and said that they wanted to work with me on some music. I'd never met them, never worked with them before. And I thought, why not? I checked out the stuff. I was like, okay, cool. He said, well, maybe send me some stuff that you've done, or some things that we can work on. So I sent him some voice notes of a few songs that I'd kind of started, and he liked one of them, and it was basically just a hook. It was a chorus, and I hadn't written any chords. I just had this idea, and I sang this chorus on my voice note, and so we decided to go with that. So I went to the studio with an a cappella chorus, and we were going to create a song from that. And it was 3 producers. It was him and 2 others. They were like this team, and it was me. So we got into the studio and we started to create. That first day we started to create more of that track. So they playing instruments and producing, and I'm contributing to that. I'm continuing to write more lyrics. I'm continuing to create the vocal parts of that track. At the end of that session, that first session, we spoke about splits. He brought it up. I would have as well, but he brought it up. He was like, he said, okay, so what were we thinking about splits? And then at the end of that first session, we decided that because I had written and would continue to write all the lyrics and the top line vocal melody, and I also came to the studio with the hook, which then gets repeated quite a few times, that I would get the lion's share of the track. So I ended up with 47-ish% of the song, and then those producers split the rest between them. So they had something like 12.5% or something. Don't look at my maths, but it's something around to that they split between themselves. And that's how we worked out the songwriting split from that. After that session, we had, 4 or 5 other sessions to finish this song. But at the end of that session, I went home and I sent an email saying, oh, great session, guys. Loved what we did. Can't wait to carry on working on this. Just to confirm, the splits that we spoke about were X, Y, and Z. And then I sent that to them and they went, yep, cool. An email is enough of a trail to have to confirm your split arrangement. And it's quite informal as well. I didn't say, I didn't pull out contracts and make it pretty formal, but it's there. So they've all got it in their email boxes. I've got it in my email box. That song didn't come out for another sort of year and a half or so. I made a video, I released it. And when we were working out, putting it on, doing PRS and the PPL, all I had to do was search my email, because I couldn't remember what the splits were, but I searched my email, didn't have to have any conversations with them, just we filled out the forms and it was all sorted because it had already been agreed. So that is a way to make sure that the conversation's had and it's not too contracty. If you want to do it, to have like a little contract, that's also good. We Loretta might put something up actually. We have some split sheets examples that we will put in the handout that you can also take to your sessions and people can sign those. I've done that before. I've been in the studio, someone being very intense about it. And I don't think it's necessary, but it is important to have the chat. So yeah, there's a little splits agreement there. You've got the date there, you've got people involved, and you've just got down the bottom the co-writers and how much of a split that you guys have agreed. It could be something as simple as that if you wanted to go that route. That's totally fine, you know. And I think we also have like just some little pie charty things of different co-writing splits as examples of how complicated it can get. It doesn't need to become as complicated as this in terms of splits, and it's unlikely to. Maybe if you have a band, there may be more conversations to be had around that because people are doing different things. But these are some examples of splits. As I said, if you're writing your own songs and you're doing most of it yourself, it's going to be pretty simple. And when you go to the studio, it will be pretty simple. But if you're going to the studio and you're creating from scratch, as Fermi said, it'd be great to have a system where you have an understanding of how of who's doing what if you're going to get that complicated. When I go to studio and I haven't haven't come to the studio with anything at all, generally with the other person I'll go, shall we just go 50-50? Yeah, okay, cool, because we're creating something in that space. I wouldn't have written that song if you wasn't there. If I'd written it at home, it would have been a totally different song. So I generally go, let's go 50-50. But there are various ways to do it, but just agree in advance. Thanks, Laura. So that's that on splits. I rambled on a bit much on that. Okay, yeah, there's one other thing on splits I wanted to mention. There may be a point that if you might be working with somebody who is a bit further down the line, who has a bit more of a profile, who, if they're going to kind of collaborate on your track as a vocalist, you're doing like a feature or something, that them being on your track might be quite a draw for you. You know, I'm in a scenario where I've got somebody on a future track who's amazing. They live in another territory, and so I wrote a song and I wrote everything, and I asked them to be on the track, and they said yeah, thankfully. And when it came to paying them, because I wanted to pay them for their contribution, they preferred to have a split of my publishing, my songwriting. And I was a little taken aback because here in the UK, generally you only get publishing if you've written on it, and this person didn't, they sang. But actually in other territories, sometimes people are remunerated for their contribution by actually having a percentage of your publishing. So I had to kind of have a think about how valuable it was to have them be a part of the project, how much I liked the song, how much and what. I had to just think about it in a different way. And so I did decide to give them sort of 15% of my publishing. It wasn't the whole bag, but 15% of my publishing instead of paying them to be on my track. And it seemed very much worthwhile to me to do that. And it also gave me an understanding that in different territories, this conversation can look different. And as I said, it's important to have that as upfront as possible. So sometimes you may be giving away a bit of your publishing, or you may decide to do that. Somebody that hasn't actually written on your track, but it may be a good reason to. But I would definitely take advice on that. Never compromise your own conscience on that. And I wouldn't give away a lot. If you've created most of the track, then you keep the lion's share, in my opinion. So I just wanted to give that example that it may look a bit different sometimes. And then I want to talk about song royalties, which is kind of obvious, but song splits are the portion of the pie, and the song royalties that anyone gets is usually in correspondence to how much of the pie they have. Do you know what I mean? So if somebody had 10% of the pie, they're going to get 10% of the royalty that will come from PPL for that track. That's obvious, but I just wanted to make that clear on that end.